On today's episode, we're joined by Serona Elton, Head of Educational Partnerships with the MLC, which stands for the Mechanical Licensing Collective. We discuss the importance of the MLC's outreach and educational efforts in their mission with students studying the music business, the resources they provide students to aid in their understanding of today's music business, and how they measure the effectiveness and impact of their initiatives, and much, much more. You don't want to miss it. Insiders, are you ready? Welcome to MUBUTV's Music Business Insider Podcast, where our mission is to educate, empower, and engage artists and music business professionals who are dedicated to having a successful career in the new music industry. Here are your hosts, Ritch, Esra, and Eric Knight.
Welcome back, Insiders, to another episode of the MUBUTV Music Business Insider Podcast, where our mission is to educate, empower, and engage your music career. On today's podcast, we welcome Serona Elton, Head of Education Partnerships at the MLC, which stands for the Music Licensing Collective. We discuss how they tailor their outreach and education programs to reach diverse student populations, the resources and tools they provide to aid students in their understanding of the current music business landscape, and the specific strategies and initiatives used to attract future members. If you're looking to break into today's music business, you don't want to miss it. Welcome back, Insiders. Today's featured guest is Serona Elton. Serona is the Head of Education Partnerships at the MLC, which stands for the Music Licensing Collective. This was a very interesting conversation, Eric, for many reasons. Number one, we really haven't looked at the MLC before. I know we've had conversations about it. Some of the things with Don Passman,
with Don,
and so forth, but we've never really had someone from the organization. And it's one of the major outcomes of the Music Modernization Act. Serona is a very interesting woman in that, she's also the head of the music business department at the University of Miami,
which I know very well.
Yeah. Exactly. I know you do. And so, this is somebody who's, walking the walk and talking the talk. So she's perfect for this job.
Yeah, I thought this was one of the points that I thought was really interesting was the specific ways they designed their outreach to cater to diverse students' populations. The way that they're bringing their programs to educate the different groups of people that are wanting to get into this business.
Yeah, absolutely, Eric. I've been involved in the music business education field since it's close to 40 years now, since 1986, so it's 38 years, and it has really progressed. It's progressed significantly, where the MLC now recognizes that particular element, like we were just saying, and sees the need for education. And there are so many programs, colleges throughout the United States, whether it's Curb or Murfreesboro or UCLA, Berkeley or USC,
MI here in LA.
that have music business programs specifically, not music.
And degreed programs in most cases.
Exactly. So the need for education, and this goes, I think, it's an important topic because to me, Eric, it goes to the heart of what we're doing here, which is to educate and empower artists. And, what's being called upon for an artist today who wants a career like we've spoken about is to educate themselves. It's no longer, I just have to be talented singer, writer, or performer, and someone else will take care of everything else. That world is gone. So this was an interesting conversation from that perspective.
And with that, Insiders, sit back, relax, and enjoy our featured conversation with Serona Elton.
Serona, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
We're very thrilled to have you. I'm very excited about this conversation.
Me too.
Can you briefly tell us what the MLC is and what its purpose is?
Sure. So MLC stands for Mechanical Licensing Collective. That does not roll off the tongue easily. So the MLC is a lot easier. So we exist specifically to collect and distribute a particular kind of royalties in the music industry, specifically digital mechanical royalties in the United States. And we can get as deep into that as you like, but we collect these kind of royalties from certain types of digital music services and then pay that money to basically the party that is doing the publishing administration of the song.
Okay. All right. Great. Good. Thank you.
Serona, it's Eric. Thank you so much. Fellow Miami person.
Yes.
Yeah,
Woo-hoo.
Amazing.
305 in the house.
305 in the house. Exactly. I wanted to ask you, how does the MLC plan to effectively engage with students studying music business and related subjects at colleges and universities?
Such a great question. So that is what my role is all about. So my title at the MLC is the Head of Educational Partnerships, and it's not a title that you'll find at really any other music organizations. And I'm very proud of this new role that we created. The primary part of my role is to create materials and programs for educators and students in colleges. So we do that in a couple of ways. We have an educator toolkit. So professors, instructors, adjuncts, full-time, doesn't matter. If you're teaching music industry or if you're teaching songwriting or composing and touching on the business side, you can download our free educator toolkit that has a PowerPoint and a video and, assigned readings and class discussion questions and, all kinds of things that educators need. We also have an educator ambassador program and a student ambassador program. So those are sort of the main three things that we use to engage. But then we also do various events. I do a lot of speaking at universities, explaining what the MLC is. We kicked off a really cool event last fall that we're going to try to do about one per semester that was called a student match-a-thon, where students really got exposed to, the challenges in matching up sound recordings to their related musical works and how does that all work, So it was a really hands-on workshop with teams and winners and, kind of gamified it. So those are really the main ways that we engage with students and educators.
Serona, as you well know, because you're on the front lines of this, we are in such a radically transformative time in the music industry. I've been in it for over 40 years, and I've never seen the pace of change happen on a sea change level, happen as quickly as it is. So my question to you based on that is, what are some of the strategies that, MLC is using to educate future music business students and so forth about some of these changes or about what's going on in the industry today? Or how are you going to attract future members to the MLC?
Sure. So I think one of the things we realized very early on in the MLC's existence was that we couldn't just show up to a panel and say, we collect and distribute this kind of royalties. Any questions? Because the first question you get is, so you're the same as a PRO? We're like, no. And then they're like, oh, you're the same as Sound Exchange? No. So we realized that approach is not going to work. Right. What we have to do is actually explain the whole landscape. We have to, so we get into explaining some fundamentals about music copyright, the difference between a sound recording and a musical work and an audiovisual work, right? Like those are three different things under copyright that, a lot of people are confused about. Then we get into explaining rights, reproduction, distribution, and public performance, copyright rights, and how those connect to the different ways we enjoy music. Then we get to explaining the different revenue streams and how those connect back to those rights and those types of works. But we have to take you on that journey. We can't just drop mechanicals on you and say, good luck, figure it out.
Right.
So much of the webinars we do, the materials we've created, are bigger than just about the MLC. They're explaining where we fit in the landscape and helping self-administered songwriters and creators understand all the different things they have to do to collect the revenue due to them, even if it's not coming through us. What I don't ever want to meet somebody who says, yeah, I get my such and such royalties from you. And I'm like, no, you don't, which means you're missing out on them. So, we tell people what we do. We also tell people what we don't do, right, so that they know you've got to take action and go get that other money. Don't miss out on it.
Yeah, it's very much like, when people think BMI or ASCAP, I've heard many people, they think that is their publisher or that is a publisher. Exactly. It's that confusion of, no. Their purpose in life is to collect public performance, they're not your publisher.
They're not your publisher. They're not your publisher. Exactly. And all songwriters really start off as self-published or self-administered. That's your default position until you then proactively, do a publishing deal or sign up with a publishing administrator. And so helping people understand even that terminology. What does it mean to be self-administered? I don't know what that means. We really take the time to explain those terms and put it in context.
Yeah, and it's so important today because so many songwriters, and Eric and I have had, what's his name? The guy who from Pacific, your friend Brian.
Bill Murphy.
Bill Murphy, on explaining and then systems like Downtown and things like Songtrust, because there's so many independent artists today and writers who need to have this understanding. That was the purpose behind Songtrust, was the volume of writers that are independent that don't have publishing deals, but they need to learn it.
Exactly.
We're in a different era for that.
We're in a different era. And, I like to put things into two buckets, know and do. What do you need to know and understand, and what do you need to do? What actions do you need to take to get your money?
So, Serona, how does the MLC plan to tailor its outreach and education programs to deliver to diverse student populations with varying levels of knowledge about the music industry? You kind of touched on that a little bit.
Yeah, so when we do speak to groups of students, whether it's in person or via Zoom a lot, we do take the time to understand from that person at the university we're connecting with, who is the audience. So, we might be talking in a music publishing class to a bunch of seniors, right, where I don't have to start off like, does everybody know the difference between a song and a recording? Or we might be talking to freshmen who don't know any of this. Or we might be talking to a school that doesn't have a music industry program, but they have students who really want to understand more about the music business, in which case we really have to explain the music business to start with, right? We can't even just jump straight into revenue flows. So I think, we tailor the message of that presentation to the audience. And that is done by interacting with the person at the university that's, working with us to plan it and say, tell me, who are these students? What do they know already? What do they not know already? And really shaping our message to, give them what they need, meet them where they are.
Okay. Currently, are there any partnerships or collaborations or initiatives with educational institutions that are in place that you can tell us about that the MLC is doing?
Sure. So we don't really partner with institutions. What we do is we work with educators.
Oh,
so
okay. Individually?
Individually,
okay.
Correct. So I think the closest thing to that would be our educator ambassadors, or educator ambassadors. So there's, I think, about 37 or so of them. They're actually listed on our website. Wow. So if you go to the website and you go under resources, then there's a whole page for educators, or themlc.com/educators. And you can see a list of who all these people are. And these are individuals who mostly teach music business, but some do, again, teach songwriting, composition. And we work with them to educate them about the MLC, all the little nuances, because, you can't just assume everybody who teaches, you might mainly teach music marketing. That doesn't mean that you're ready to explain the MLC to a bunch of students, right? So we go through a process with those educators to educate them, right? Teach the teacher. And then, they go through it actually like a test with us to prove that they understand what we do. And then we onboard them as ambassadors. And then, they generally are giving presentations about the MLC about twice a year, whether it's in a regular class, and that's just module 6 in the publishing class, right? Or it might be that they're doing a specific event, an evening event for, it's not part of one course, but hey, let's just do an information session. Whatever works for them at their particular campuses. We work with them, we send them some swag to give to students. Students love free stuff, So that's really the main way we're connecting with institutions, is through the educators specifically.
Amazing. I wanted to ask you, because you touched a little bit about, how you tailor the classes depending on the makeup of the class, whether they're beginners, intermediates, or they already know their music publishing. I'm curious, what resources or tools can the MLC provide to students to aid in their understanding of the music business and the related topics?
Right. So we have a variety of different types of information on our website. And in fact, what we've done is we have also a page on the website dedicated just to students, themlc.com/students. And if you go there, what we've done is we've put together links to different information on our website that might be useful if you're creating an assignment. Like, let's say you're doing, a class and the teacher's like, you need to write about an organization or write about licensing. So we've got some ideas for assignments, and then we've got links to information on our website that could help you to learn what you need to learn to do that assignment. So our student page is just there for anybody. You don't have to have a login or be a student ambassador for it, but it's meant to sort of act as a central hub for students who are looking for more information, so that, some of them might be creators. They want to understand if they need to join the MLC, but some of them might be, doing an assignment in a licensing class or a copyright class and want to touch on something from the MLC. So we've compiled information from our website, which includes things like our frequently asked questions. We've got a lot of FAQs use that explain terminology. We explain music industry identifiers. In fact, that's another page that I had us do, the mlc.com/identifiers that explains all the different music industry identifiers. We've also got lots of instructional videos on our YouTube channel. Some of them are animated, really this great animation company we're working with that are like short little, straight to the point animated videos. So all of that is there for everybody, but then we've kind of compiled it a bit for students to make it easy for them to find it.
This next question, I guess it's personal to you in terms of your history as an educator. How do you see, because you've been in this a long time, how do you see the students of today forming the industry of tomorrow? Like what would be your goal, if you will, as the head of educational outreach for the MLC, for students of the future of the music business? If you will. Yeah,
well, one of the things that excites me is their curiosity and their lack of tolerance for being told, well, that's just how it is, right?
Okay.
That Good. Doesn't really fly with this generation, which is great. But one of the things that then I focus on in all my classes, and then it bleeds into my work at the MLC, is I think it's really important for students to understand, how did we get here? Because to solve tomorrow's problems, you can't parachute in and just think you magically have the answer that
right.
everybody who's been toiling in this industry for years hasn't come up with. That's when you end up with solutions in search of a problem, right? But if you really understand, why is this inefficient? Why doesn't this work? Why is this process like this?
Yeah.
Then you can possibly start thinking of ways to make it better. But it's a bit of a consulting 101. You have to define the problem before you can come up with solutions. And so they might hear something and say, that doesn't seem fair. And I'll say, great, I'm glad, harness that passion. But what's fair? How do you determine what's fair? Fair is a value judgment, right? Fair is that, it costs more than a cup of coffee, less than a car. Like, where do you place fair? Like, fair is a very value judgment. So I try to have them think more, deeper, go deeper. Don't just kind of react. Build on that passion. But now you've got to really sink your teeth in, understand it really, really well to come up with a proposed solution.
Yeah, it's so interesting hearing you talk about, fair. This is a conversation, and I'm sure you see this all the time, of, that we've heard within the songwriting community that they can't make the money that they used to from radio. And I hear it and I get it. But what's never spoken about in that conversation is the landscape of how few people, and nobody ever speaks about that, how few songwriters made that money back then. And how the industry is making literally 100 times more money than it was in the 80s or 90s in publishing, but it's going to 250,000 times more writers.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of things that don't actually unpack it. You only hear one slant of the story. And, as much as people do like to kind of poke fun at academia, and some of it's justified, there is something to be said for real research, which is, find out all the perspectives, gather all the information. Then you can form an opinion, you can offer solutions. It's funny, the other day someone was asking me something about something. I go, no, I don't really have an opinion on that. I haven't had a chance to study it. And they were like, what? Somebody who doesn't have an opinion? I'm like, yeah, I actually don't form opinions unless I've had the time to do my homework. I don't think I get to have the luxury of an opinion if it's not well informed. Right. So that's something I try to impart.
Absolutely.
Serona, how can you measure the effectiveness of your programs and their engagement with students and the impact of its education initiatives?
I mean, that's a great question. I think certainly we have the actual numbers, how many ambassadors, of students, how many educator ambassadors, how many toolkit downloads. What is harder to measure? And it's a good question that really pertains to anything you want to measure. How much time and energy you're going to spend on the measuring of it, right? I would love to find out from all those educators who take a copy of our toolkit, how many students did you put this in front of? But I'm also cautious not to create too much of a burden for all those educators to be like, look, if you're going to use this, you got to report back to me and tell me exactly how many, right? So that's always the dilemma with anything you want to measure, how much effort's going to take to measure it, and is that effort worth it? And, are you creating a burden for somebody, right? So I think right now it's really, it's anecdotal, but it happens all the time at conferences. I've had students come up to me and say, I learned about the MLC from my professor in class. They showed this video, that kind of stuff happens all the time. So it's not, it's not specifically quantifiable research. It is anecdotal, qualified type research, but I think it's giving us the encouragement that we need.
Absolutely. Serona, I want to ask you, throughout your life, have there been any books or movies that you've seen that have really inspired you, professionally speaking, that you could recommend to our audience?
Oh, goodness, that is a good question. There's a couple of books that I love and use all the time.
Okay.
One of the three, I will have to say, is a bit of a shameless plug because I have taken over the book.
Okay.
But I loved it before I ever got involved with it. So the three must-have books, I think, on every person's bookshelf in the music business, right, is, of course, the Donald Passman, All You Need to Know About the Music Business. There's also the Music, Money, and Success book by Jeff and Todd Braybeck.
Jeff and Todd.
And then the third book, and I'll try and make the story short, it's called the Music Business Handbook and Career Guide.
Yes. I know it very well. Yeah. Baskin.
Exactly. It was Baskerville. So now it's actually Baskerville Elton.
Oh,
so you understand I took over.
That, but I started teaching in the 80s with that book. It was the only one that had that scope.
Exactly.
This business of music was too
minutia. I know. Yes.
That one was the one. And
so
I still
you
have,
understand.
Yeah, I do.
Totally understand.
I have my teacher's edition.
So I took over that book.
The
13th edition came out in December 22.
Fantastic.
And the three authors are David Baskerville, Tim Baskerville, and Serona Elton.
How wonderful.
And then the 14th edition is going to just be Serona Elton, but we're going to honor the Baskerville name somehow because, there's the legacy there. I used the 5th edition of that book when I did my master's in music business a long time ago.
Right.
And so it's such an honor to, take over a legacy that's used by thousands, tens of thousands of students across the country every year. And, to me, people will say, oh, well, why do people need that book and the Passman book? I'm like, they're very different. They come at it differently. And the book that I've now done, it is a true textbook. And the benefits of that are that take a chapter on, copyright or publishing.
Yes.
It starts with the how did we get here? What are the historical milestones, right? How does it all work? How is it working today? And what's on the horizon? So it's not just a book for the moment to teach you just how to do something, but it also gives you that whole context of why and how and where's it going. And it's great for educators as well because it's got things like discussion questions and
absolutely.
So I really view these three books as serving different purposes that are all very complementary to each other. And very, very proud to have taken over that book.
When is that new edition coming?
So the 13th edition came out at the end of 2022. Right now, talk to the publisher. The 14th edition is going to come out probably around April 26th.
Okay, so sometime
we still have some time.
A couple months.
And will that be something that's available? Is it strictly through schools?
No. You can get it on Amazon.
Amazon? Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
So we're going to put that on our...
Yeah, you can get it on Amazon. And now because it's been out for a while, because the truth is, if any of you have looked at textbook prices, right? Textbooks are a little more pricey than trade books. But because it's been out for a while, you can get a used copy. You can get an ebook copy, right? So you can save a little money. But obviously... I biasly say I think it's worth it.
Absolutely. And what about movies? Have there been any films that have really inspired you professionally over the years?
That is such a great question that you ask. And, nothing just comes to mind, no one movie. But I will say, whenever there's a new movie coming out that's like a biopic about an artist, I can't wait to see it, or an industry person. And actually, there's a new class that we're developing at UM that is going to be for non-music business students, just general students who want to just kind of understand a bit about the music industry. And the approach we're going to take is to line up a bunch of movies for them to watch each week. Like you'll have to have a Netflix subscription, right, to take the class. Line up a movie each week, and something about that movie will help explain some part of the music industry that then we'll build on, right? So I will be this summer putting together that list of movies for that class.
Okay.
I'm probably rewatching a lot of them. So the next time you ask me, I'll probably have a much better answer.
Okay. For those purposes, because I'm also a teacher. I teach at Musicians Institute course in the music business. I would like to recommend Shangri-La. I don't know if you've seen it yet.
I have not, but I just saw
It's extraordinary.
somebody was talking about it the other day.
Yes, got
It's
to
a
see that.
4-hour documentary in 4 parts.
Got it.
But it's all about creativity.
Amazing.
And how do you bring that out in a writer or in an artist? You don't just say, okay, we're in the studio, go.
Right.
It doesn't work that way. And it's a really deep dive into
Amazing.
what are the things that promote creativity? How do you pull it out of people?
I can't wait to see it.
It's extraordinary. And I think for your students who are in this business, who are going to be future producers,
Absolutely.
it's mandatory for producers and songwriters who have to
I
do
will
that.
check it out and
But
then
I think
spread the word.
you will really enjoy it for those purposes, because you mentioned about, having the film class. So
Yeah.
And so many of those documentaries, I know Bruce Springsteen has made 3 on the making of his albums. One was for Born to Run, one was for Darkness, and one was for The River. And they are extraordinary in terms of looking at how does the creative process work?
Yeah.
How do you create a great, a Born to Run isn't just like, oh, it came out and here it is.
Exactly.
He talks
It
about
puts you in the room. It really
how
it
he
gets
did
you
that.
there. It's
and how he
amazing.
did the writing and rewriting and rewriting and rewriting
Fascinating.
and rewriting and work, and months and months and months and work to get something like that. So
that is so valuable, because I think students can easily, and just young creators can think it just happens so easily. You just go in one night and then the next day you walk out and you got magic. They don't necessarily know just how much work it takes, how many times you have to keep at it. So I love those kind of, place yourself in the studio. Now you really understand what it takes.
yes. And it is interesting. I mean, a lot of times people say, "Oh, we wrote that in 10 minutes," but it took you 30 years to get to the point where you could write it in 10 minutes.
Right, exactly.
And so
And most are not written in 10 minutes. Those are the exceptions, not the rule.
That's right. Exactly.
Serona, what advice do you have for those who are interested in building their careers in the new music industry?
I would say, so there is so much information coming at you, and it's easier than ever before to get your hands on information. But it's at the same time, it can be overwhelming, right? So I say you need to approach gathering that knowledge in a systematic way. Get yourself a physical or digital notebook, whatever your style is, however you like to capture notes. You're not going to learn about the whole music industry and keep it in your head. It's not going to happen, right? So if you're serious about this, say, I need to learn everything about all these different sectors. Let me create my physical or digital notebook, and I'm going to just set off on a quest to gather information, and I'm going to capture notes to myself that I can refer back to later, so that I really am building a foundation of knowledge. I think a foundation of knowledge is so critical. And, I see it even when people go to work in big companies, right? You could just get a job, learn how to do your job, be good at your job, but your career is not going to take off if you don't know how everybody else who does work before it gets to you did what they did, and then what happens when you're done with it. Like, where do you fall in the process? What comes before you? What comes after you in whatever process you're a part of? Whether it's the creative process, whether it's, some very business technical process, you have to understand everything that comes before you get involved, everything that happens after you get involved. It will make you so much better at what you do. But that only comes from systematically gathering that information, making notes, make that your valuable, notebook. Like, this is my Bible. I've created this for myself. I'm capturing all these little nuggets. I'll be in a panel session and some speaker will say something that resonates, jot it down, be a gatherer of nuggets of information that you can refer to later.
Okay. Wonderful. Serona, we cannot thank you enough for coming by and doing this. This was really, really inspiring and educational and wonderful. Thank you.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you so much. Anytime.
Wow. What a great conversation.
Yeah.
Really, really enjoyed that with Serona. I'm so glad that we had her on the podcast, because so many of the programs and the initiatives like the MLC is offering, and like she discussed, are more valuable than ever before in today's landscape. I mean, Eric, like we were talking at the top of the program, the need for people to be educated, especially artists who want a career, not a hobby, but want to make music their career. This is absolutely crucial stuff. So to hear the initiatives that they were offering in schools, the programs, the outreach, the kinds of opportunities that they're, making available, is really, really exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. And then just to kind of piggyback on what you were saying, Rich, the tools that they provide students, which you were mentioning, to utilize was also very interesting. I think they have like a whole video series that they have of different videos and stuff like that to educate their, students and audience. And it goes back to like what you said at the top of the show, that this is kind of what we're doing, what it is that we're trying to provide everybody that's listening out there, our insiders, whether you're somebody that's wanting to pursue this on the performing creative side, or if it's on the business aspect of it. This is the heart of what we're doing, and it's just another extension with what Serona, and Serona's been in the business probably as long as you have in terms of the educational part of the music business.
Yeah, without exception. And I'm so glad that, we had this opportunity to do it because, as we've spoken before, and I use in my own company, when you're ready to put your music to work, you need to become educated about the field that you want to get into. That's absolutely crucial. So I think an educated artist is a successful artist.
Hey, insiders, thanks so much for tuning into this episode. We really appreciate it. To get show notes, links, and everything that was mentioned during this interview, head on over to our official website at MUBUTV.com/podcast/show notes. If you're enjoying the content and what we're doing here on the show, please subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts from. And don't forget to rate and review our show at iTunes. 5-star reviews are always welcome and help to ensure that our podcast stands out on the top-rated and new and noteworthy charts on iTunes and our space. You can also find us at social media at Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter X, all ending with the handle MUBUTV, which is spelled MUBUTV. Don't forget to catch our flagship show, the MUBUTV Music Business Insider video series, airing every week on YouTube at youtube.com/MUBUTV. This show was produced and created by Ritch, Esra, and Eric Knight. Theme music by Disciples of Babylon, and be sure to tune in next week for another episode of the MUBUTV Music Business Insider Podcast.